Hey, Zoe here. You're listening to It's Just Politics, and today we are bringing you the second part of our interviews with the Democratic candidates running for Michigan's open U.S. Senate seat. Yesterday was an interview with Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Today, Michigan Public's April Baer speaks with former Wayne County health official Abdul El-Sayed. Here's April.
This is Stateside. I'm April Baer. Voting is happening among Michigan's most important contests this year, a seat in the U.S. Senate as Democrat Gary Peters steps away. The Democratic primary is one of the most hotly contested parts of this race, and it's drawn a healthy share of national attention as voters and analysts try to understand where the party is headed. Yesterday, you heard us speaking with Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Today, we welcome the other frontrunner, Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. You'll remember he has served public health roles with both the city of Detroit and Wayne County, and now he's running for Senate. Abdul, welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me.
You've undertaken, this is not your first statewide campaign. You've undertaken campaigns for governor before. Tell us your pitch for voters about why you should be elected to this specific statewide seat when they may know you as a candidate who was not successful in prior races.
Yeah. So I ran back in 2018 for governor, and I said something at the time I think folks weren't quite ready to hear, which is that Donald Trump is not himself the disease of our politics. He's the worst symptom of the disease of our politics. And in the ensuing 8 years, that disease has gotten worse. The disease is the system that allows corporations, billionaires, special interests to buy and sell politicians to rig the system against us. It's why we pay more for all we have to buy. We get paid less for the work we do. We watch as our tax dollars get misappropriated abroad to do terrible things to other people rather than kept here to do good things for our people. And we have an opportunity to think past that. I remember sitting in my office back the day that this race opened up when Senator Gary Peters announced that he was not seeking re-election. It was the day that the Trump administration had frozen federal funds. So I'm sitting in my office in Detroit trying to figure out how to make sure WIC checks go out, how to make sure that our federally qualified health centers don't shut down, how to make sure that vaccines keep going in arms. And I had to ask myself, where is the fight for this work now? If I were to be elected, I'd be the first Democratic doctor elected to the U.S. Senate since 1969. First ever public health official elected to the U.S. Senate. And I think we probably could use one of those right about now as we try to dodge lettuce and not breathe the air. So all of that is to say, my message hasn't changed, but where you think about where that message needs to go, we need policymakers in the U.S. Senate who aren't bought off by the system that exists to stand up for things like the ability to have a job in an economy where AI is barreling down on us, the ability to know that you're going to have a say in what happens in your own backyard because they want to move an AI data center in, the ability to know that you can get healthcare when you need it, that you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to send your kid to school or go to school yourself, that your kid's school is actually going to look like the kind of place that's dignifying of their minds. All of these things need to get us to think past the system. And I've been thinking about that and writing about that and advocating along that for the better part of 10 years now.
Even if this election is not specifically about Donald Trump, you cited the bigger picture. Michigan did go for him narrowly in the last presidential contest. How do you hope to win over his voters?
You know, there's not a town hall that I do where somebody doesn't come up to me and say, I voted for Donald Trump 3 times and I'm voting for you. And I'll ask them why. And they'll say, it's because I really think you want me to have health care. And I really think you're America first. Like, you want to keep my money here. You don't want to send it to drop bombs on other people. And you've been clear about that from the jump. And I've been watching you for 10 years. You say the same thing to everybody. That consistency is what we often lose. I think when voters are asking about a candidate, they're asking 2 questions. One is explicit and one is implicit. The explicit question is, what do you say you're going to fight for? And then the implicit question is, how do I know you're going to fight for it? You've had $50 million come into this race on behalf of my Democratic opponent, most of that money coming from an organization focused on sending our money abroad, the rest of that coming from corporations through shell packs. And what that tells you is, I don't back down. When I tell you what I want to fight for, you know I'm going to show up and fight for it because I don't pull my punch. I don't pretend to say the thing that you want to hear. I tell you what I really believe, and I've been saying it for 10 years now. So all of this is to say that we can either have a corrupted system where DTE, Blue Cross, Big Pharma, Big Tech, AIPAC spend money to elect both the Democrat and the Republican, or we can actually have a Democratic Party that is going to show up and push back against that corporatized system to put people back in the center of our politics.
Abdul, this has been a devastating year for Americans watching immigration enforcement staffers deputized by the federal government, watching those officers take lives, including the lives of U.S. citizens, green card holders who have done no wrong, and others. You've called for abolishing ICE. What is a reasonable alternative?
So just remember, ICE didn't exist 25 years ago. People want to pretend like ICE was written in the Constitution. The Constitution was written specifically to protect us from things like ICE. The whole point was that the government wasn't allowed to become tyrannical on you. And now you have this agency that operates outside of normal bounds. They're taking people's lives at the specter of immigration. I just want to be clear. I went to Minneapolis at the height of Project Metro Surge. I wanted to see for myself what it looks like when an agency goes rogue, when they lay siege to a city in our own country. And what I saw gave me chills. It still gives me chills. And what's clear to me is that ICE is actually not about immigration. ICE is about normalizing paramilitary force on our streets with the excuse of immigration. So we can have a safe, secure southern border. I believe in that. We can even enforce our immigration laws. I believe in that, but not at the expense of the Constitution itself. And so I think we abolish ICE, and what we do is we build a very targeted force that respects the will of the people and the Constitution, only enforces in the circumstances where somebody has become a danger to society, and otherwise puts the Constitution first and foremost as it was always supposed to be.
Are you suggesting a new agency, or maybe that these tasks could be parceled out among the Department of Justice, the State Department, the Department of Commerce?
I think we need to be thinking about both alternatives, right? What we don't have right now is a thoughtful immigration court system that actually enables people to work through the system and have a pathway to citizenship. So I think you need a targeted multi-agency task force focused specifically on enforcing in the circumstances where there is a threat to public safety. And that could either be done through a set of the agencies you talked about or a new force under DHS. But all of that is to say that ICE on its own terms right now, as it's been created, cannot continue and must be abolished. And I just want to be clear, maybe it's just because I've run government agencies, but when you have a culture of impunity that sets in and folks think that they are above the law, you cannot reform or retrain that. You need to abolish it and start from scratch.
Let's move on to foreign policy. Your campaign has hit a nerve with voters who are unhappy with U.S. policies on Gaza, bombings in Lebanon, and on Israel, this longstanding relationship that we have. What do you have to say to voters who you might differ with, how you'll represent their views as a senator?
Let's just start on principles. I believe in equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination for Palestinian and Jewish Israelis alike. I believe that our tax dollars, the only communities that have a right to our tax dollars, are communities here who pay them. And I believe that we cannot continue to send our tax dollars to foreign governments unconditionally. That is Israel, but that's also Egypt, where my family immigrated from. That's Saudi Arabia, that's Qatar, that's UAE, that's Pakistan, that's Jordan. And I believe that we ought to be the principal enforcer of the international law system that we helped to architect after World War II. And so what that means to me is that when you have a rogue state like the state of Israel that has conducted a genocide, at baseline conducts apartheid, has taken us to a war where they're attempting to annex southern Lebanon, that we should treat them the way that we would treat any other country that violates international law. And yet we run cover for them. We send them unconditional military aid. Now, look, a lot of folks will point and say, well, why don't you support a two-state solution? And what I'll say to that is I support the solution that comes out of the process that dignifies equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination for a free Palestinian people and Jewish Israeli people alike. It's not my job to dictate what the ultimate peace should look like. It's my job to make sure that our tax dollars don't push that ultimate peace further and further away. And the last point I'll say is this. We've had it as a stated policy in this country to have a two-state solution for I don't know how long. But our money gets sent abroad to aid, arm, and abet a government that is actively trying to foreclose on the possibility of a Palestinian state. So what does it mean to say a thing versus to do a thing? And I'm just asking that we stick according to our principles. So if folks can say, well, Abdul, your principles don't apply because you're making exceptions here and there, show me where I'm making exceptions. But until then, tell me where you disagree with my principles. And most of the time what happens is people say they agree with my principles but disagree with my arguments, which is to say that either one of us is not being consistent. And so point to me where I'm being inconsistent. Ultimately, our job is to look out for people in our own country. There are places not too far from here in Ypsilanti, April, where there are children who go to schools that look like they did 50 years ago. They can barely breathe clean air. They worry about even getting to school because there are so many potholes on the roads. And you want to tell me that the best use of $3.3 billion is to send it to a foreign government to buy bombs and tanks to drop on other people and their kids? That, to me, seems just ridiculous.
Abdul, I don't have to tell you about the ways that Arab and Muslim people have been treated in this country, especially in the last 25 years. Islamophobia is mainstream these days. And also, Jewish voters I've talked to are just increasingly shaken and frightened by anti-Semitic attacks in this country. A temple right here in southeast Michigan, Jewish people who may even believe that the Israeli government is wrong, who believe that genocide is a word that we should use to talk about what happens in Gaza, who still feel like their kids hear slurs in the schools and that they're targeted because of their faith in a Jewish state. Can you assure them that you do believe in Israel's survival and that Israel's existence has benefits for the U.S.?
I believe deeply that anti-Semitism is a scourge. I grew up in a community where I was blessed that 40% of the kids I went to school with were Jewish. I learned so much about the Jewish faith and Jewish history and culture and traditions and contributions to American life. Judaism is a beautiful faith, and the Jewish people are a beautiful people. And I stand forthrightly 100% against anti-Semitism as someone who knows what it's like to be discriminated against for how I pray. In fact, anti-Semitism and Islamophobia tend to go hand in hand. Now, I think we have to differentiate between Judaism and the Jewish people and AIPAC and the state of Israel or the government of Israel. Those are different things. And any attempt to use the specter of anti-Semitism to cover a foreign government, I think, does a disservice to the idea of anti-Semitism. I think it is in and of itself anti-Semitic. And I'll just say this. I intend to be a principal critic of the Egyptian government and military in the U.S. Senate. Does that make me anti-Egyptian? Probably not. I'm by blood 100% Egyptian. Similarly, should people hold me accountable for what the government of Egypt does because I happen to share the same ethnicity as most of the people who live in Egypt? No. So I think if we applied that principle evenly everywhere, we would come to a very different set of conclusions. It's our job as a country to look out for people in our country. And it is our job as a country not to use our tax dollars to hurt other people. And I also just want to change the frame here a little bit. Let's not forget that there were 73,000 at the minimum people killed by our tax dollars as a function of a foreign government, that very exact same foreign government that we're talking about sending our tax dollars to now. And if we want to discount the lives of Palestinians and Palestinian children and women and Palestinian infrastructure and Palestinian rights, then we can go on and have a conversation about why we should put one state's interests above a different people. But I personally just think, go back to where I started. The Palestinian people and Jewish Israeli people have equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination, and I do not want my tax dollars to be spent taking any of those away.
Let's swing back to domestic matters. Many communities in Michigan have AI data centers either in the works or already under construction in their communities. How would you support the federal government changing the way that it regulates the data center boom that Michigan experiences right now?
Well, right now, the federal government doesn't regulate anything. And herein lies the big problem. We actually don't have real regulations on this or the broader question of AI more generally. We're talking about technology that is probably the single most important technology to hit humankind in the last century, maybe beyond. And we still, as a federal government, have nothing to say about it. And part of the problem here goes back to the central issue of money out of politics. There's way too much corporate money sloshing around. $100 million super PACs that are spending money in races like ours to try to make sure that this becomes ungovernable. So when it comes to data centers in particular, I actually think that we need federal policy, and we needed it yesterday. We've put forward what we call a terms of engagement, that if you want to build a data center anywhere in the United States of America, you better abide by the following terms. Number one, no touching water. They should be all closed loop systems. Number two, there shall not be an increase in electrical utility fees. Any utility involved in the project should be taking some of its revenue to invest in better reliability, not worse reliability, or not even the same reliability. All of the jobs that they say they're going to create better be good union jobs. They better create every last job that they created. And then they got to make the community rich. There needs to be a community benefits agreement negotiated in good faith that puts all of the money up front in escrow that the community can expect. and that all of this needs to be enforceable by clear fees, fines, and the ability to shut down a data center if they don't abide. Right now, a lot of these corporations are able to use their heft, their power, their money to truck local communities and get what they want in this race to the bottom between them. The federal government is the only actor that's big enough that actually can regulate and set the floor for what a community should be able to expect, so you don't have this race to the bottom between different communities.
I want to bring things to an issue that you've campaigned a lot on, and you've already mentioned healthcare. The Affordable Care Act premiums, subsidies, elimination has been a big hit to a lot of communities in Michigan. People who might have bought insurance on a private market are facing paying so much, many just chose not to pay at all and to take their chances. And the costs of employer-funded health plans are up as well. What's the answer on healthcare?
I believe it's Medicare for all. And let me just talk about what that would mean. You know, chances are, April, in your back pocket or your purse, there's probably an insurance card. You and Michigan Radio each pay a bit into that. It's probably about $2,000 a month. And then on top of that, you probably have a deductible. And that deductible, you know, for the average family of four is about $4,500. That's the money you have to pay to get access to the insurance you thought you already paid for in $2,000 a month. And then there's a copay and there's a network. You can't just go to any doctor or any hospital or any clinic. You got to go where they tell you can go. Otherwise, you're going to pay a whole lot more money out of network. That's the experience of having private health insurance now. And those premiums, by the way, went up about 15% last year. What Medicare for All would mean is that next to that card, you have another card. That card is given to you the day you're born, does not expire until the day you expire, God willing, at 120 years of life after a long, healthy life. And it doesn't go away if you turn 26 or get married or get divorced or get a job or lose a job or turn 65. It's just there for you. And there's no network. That's what we're talking about. Now, look, the current system we have, it monetizes the fact that we might get sick. And it creates a whole lot of extra money that we pay. Money to pay the CEO's bloated salary, money for marketing, money because of the billing that has to happen. Medicare for All gets rid of all of that, offers us durable health care for less than we pay right now, and the healthcare side stays private. So any doctor out there, any clinic out there says, hey, you know, we could get great patients and provide good care, we can do that. So we need to address the one issue that's keeping us from doing that, which is the power and the money of these corporations to buy off politicians to make sure that we cannot have this conversation and cannot have Medicare for All. It is a political problem.
If we had Medicare for All, how could we possibly afford to cover more people given the costs that we already have on the federal government's table right now?
So 2 points. Number one, we can thank Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, George W. Bush, and Donald Trump for that much added spending. Why? Because every time they get elected, they fearmonger about what we want to do to actually provide people things they want. And then they do two things. Number one, they cut taxes on the richest people. And number two, they take us into wars we have no business fighting. With $500 billion, what we spent on this stupid war that just raised our gas prices already. So maybe we should stop doing those things. I believe in taxing billionaires their wealth, and I believe in ending stupid foreign wars or unconditional foreign military aid to countries that are doing genocide. That's number one. Then number two is we already pay for it. April, like 19 cents on the dollar for every dollar spent in the whole economy is spent on healthcare. We already pay for it. It just comes out of our back pockets in the least efficient way possible. So this question is always raised to say, well, we can't possibly have nice things because our government's too busy doing bad things. Well, no, let's stop doing bad things and then start doing good things and doing them in a way that actually saves everyday people money.
Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is a candidate for the U.S. Senate. Abdul, it's good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was Michigan Public's April Baer speaking with former health official Abdul El-Sayed. We had Congresswoman Haley Stevens on the show yesterday. You can find that in your feed. And a note that Michigan Public has reached out to former Congressman Mike Rogers, who is running on the Republican ticket. If he accepts an interview request, we will bring you that conversation as well. And that is It's Just Politics for today. Let's talk again next week.